In February of 2025, the Commander format panel released the beta for the Commander Bracket system, a new way to place your deck into one of 5 different categories and better match it against your opponents. Since then, the system has seen some changes, so today I'm going to take one Commander through all 5 brackets, talk about what each bracket is, where your decks fall, and how you can tune a deck up or down depending on where you want to land. This video is meant for players of all skill levels from beginners to enfranchised veterans, so let's get into it. But first, this video is proudly sponsored by Voidmonster. Voidmonster.org is an online shop created by card artist Forrest Amell. He's probably most famous for illustrating the banned Commander powerhouse Dockside Extortionist, but some of his other bangers include Carrot Cake, Pillage the Bog, and objectively the most beautiful printing of Solemn Simulacrum. Each month, Forrest releases a new and exclusive drop on Voidmonster, all drawn by him, available only for pre-order. The latest drop is the Red Collection. From Chaos to Aggro, Dragons to Goblins, this beautiful drop is perfect for all you Red players. I don't even play Red that much, but this mat is so gorgeous, it's definitely going to be my new daily. The Red Collection includes a playmat, deck box, sleeves, and binder, and the pre-order period ends March 1st, so click the link below and get yours before time's up. It also lets Voidmonster know that we're good partners for the future. Big thanks to Forrest, and thanks to y'all for supporting the channel. There's a lot to get into here. First, the bracket system is designed around intentionality and not just the power of your deck. This is something you'll see frequently mentioned, and if you're new to Magic, this might not seem like it makes a ton of sense, but Commander is Magic's leading casual format. It's much more akin to sitting down for a board game night with a few friends, and as such, making sure everyone is around the same level is important for everybody having a good time. There are always variables we can't control, like drawing 10 lands in a row or a large experience gap between players, but as a whole, each deck in any given Commander game should have as reasonable a chance to win as everyone else, and if one person is continuously causing problems with powerful cards or insufferable play patterns, it's just a lot less fun for the rest of the group. The Commander brackets are a tool to help facilitate the pregame conversation and kickstart a discussion around what your opponents should expect from you and vice versa. There are certain play patterns that are considered taboo in lower power games, like mass land denial, taking several turns in a row, and early game 2-card combos. As such, the bracket system has restrictions for each of these at different levels, as well as how many game changers you can run, which I'll get to later in the video. There are also estimated turn counts for each bracket. I'll reiterate each of these as we get to them, but there's 2 ways you can read this. This is either how long games should expect to go before anyone is eliminated, or how long a game should reasonably last before you do your thing, whatever that means for you. When I reference this number coming up, I'll be referring to it as the turn at which one or more players are eliminated, since I feel like that's a more understandable metric, but if you're playing a deliberately slower strategy that aims to control the board and play a longer match, it doesn't necessarily mean that your deck is a bracket 2 because it wins on a later turn. Just remember that the bracket system is meant to help everyone have fun, and ultimately it's up to everyone at the table to be honest and upfront about what kind of game they intend to play. Alright, let's finally introduce the Commander. Taking us through all 5 brackets today will be Esika, God of the Tree, and her flipside counterpart, the Prismatic Bridge. Esika is a 3-mana 1/4 god with Vigilance that can tap for 1 mana of any color and lets all our legendary creatures do the same. This front side alone can be very powerful guaranteed ramp that turns a board of already dangerous threats into an extreme accelerant, but where this Commander gets really spicy is the backside. The Prismatic Bridge costs Wooburg for an enchantment that reads, at the beginning of your upkeep, reveal cards off the top of your library until you reveal a creature or planeswalker card, put that card onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Enchantments are widely considered the hardest permanent to remove, and having one that rips a random creature or planeswalker straight to the battlefield every turn basically creates a ticking time bomb of value. Not only that, but this mana cost gives our deck every color to work with, and therefore every threat we could possibly imagine. It's important to note that Esika is the Commander for a CEDH deck called Semi-Blue, which is a necessary prerequisite for Bracket 5. For that segment, I'll have a special guest talk more about Semi-Blue when we get there. But for now, what could Bracket 1 Esika possibly look like? Bracket 1, also known as Exhibition, is purely thematic. Bracket 1 decks are built with the sole purpose of showcasing something interesting, unique, or self-expressive. Whatever your theme is, it should have almost nothing to do with winning the game. Instead, your deck is more of a silly creation that you bring to show and tell. This could be cards with your favorite art, a deck full of minigames, or characters whose names are all palindromes. B1 decks should last at least 9 turns before anyone is eliminated, and typically aren't allowed to run game changers, MLD, extra turns, or 2-card combos, but this is where things get a little weird. For every other bracket, these rules are hard and fast, and I'll touch on them in a little bit, but in Bracket 1, you can actually break any of these limitations so long as they are truly thematic in your deck. If you want to put Blood Moon in your Moon Art deck, or Ancient Tomb in your Mummy deck, go for it. So long as you're acting in good faith, you can really play whatever cards you want. You just need to bring it up with the pod before the game starts and make sure the table is cool with it. Notably, that even gives us access to cards that aren't even legal, like silver border cards from unsets, and that's where my Esika comes in. My Bracket 1 Esika deck is jammed full of the wackiest silver border cards I could find. Not only is every non-land card illegal in Commander, but they're all hand-picked to maximize for the most goofy game possible. Each of these gave me a smile, and I wanted to share these absurd cards with players who may have never experienced or even known about this side of Magic. I will say I'm too much of a coward to dive into stickers, contraptions, attractions, or other cards that make you open packs, but these cards are standalone bangers and not to be underestimated. Some of my personal favorites include the Rod of Spanking, Frankie Peanuts, and Pointy Finger of Doom, to name a few. Not gonna lie, as I was making this deck, I realized just how many actually good cards there are, which I guess makes sense since these are built for a sealed tournament, so I left out some more evil ones that I saw. There are definitely a non-zero amount of Staxy cards here though, and many spells in this deck make your opponents do weird stuff too, so along with the pre-game bracket conversation, I would likely bring all this up and make sure everyone's cool with playing a chaotic game. Bracket 1 games should be expected to last at least 9 turns before anyone wins or loses, but games can definitely go longer than that. As long as everyone's having fun showing off their weird lists, there's no rush. This is also why I took out Now I Know My ABCs, since in each playtest it came up, it was actually winning around turn 7 and 8, which I honestly never expected it to win at all. As for win cons, well, I don't really have anything specifically. If the game needs to end, we can all agree to a draw, or I can grind out some value with the Prismatic Bridge. There's definitely some pretty hard-hitting spells if the game goes long enough, but honestly, I'm not too worried about it. Alright, let's move on to Bracket 2. Bracket 2, or Core, is the first bracket where you actually want to win. There should be some kind of mechanical theme in your deck that helps build you towards taking out your opponents. B2 games can be expected to last at least 8 turns before eliminations, and decks shouldn't be able to chain extra turns or run Game Changers, MLD, or 2-card combos. Seeing as this is the first real bracket to take these seriously, I'll give a quick definition of each. MLD, or Mass Land Denial, are cards or combos that aim to remove or otherwise impair your opponent's lands in large quantities. One-off effects that shoot a few lands or tap everyone's lands for a turn are generally okay, but cards like Armageddon, Winter Orb, or Blood Moon that represent a long-term setback are considered MLD. And like I said, this includes combos. If you put Helldozer in your Kirk Lifegain deck, you definitely put it in with the intent of blowing up a bunch of lands, and therefore you've got yourself some MLD, albeit jank. 2-card combos refer to any 2 cards that end the game themselves, go infinite, or create some lockout. I'll throw some combos on screen, so feel free to pause and take a look. It's worth noting that while Conjurer's Closet plus Noxious Gearhulk is technically a combo with 2 cards, they don't count as a 2-card combo for the sake of this limitation. This would be perfectly fine in B2. Ultimately, it's up to you to make sure that your deck is following the rules, and if you're ever on the fence, I would simply ask the table what they think before the game starts. Just because we're trying to win doesn't mean we're not without flavor though. Bracket 2 is still on the lower end of the competitive spectrum, and many decks at this level are still highly thematic. Bracket 2 is the perfect sandbox to explore unique playstyles, under-supported type pools, deck limitations, and overall play whatever pet cards you like without worrying about efficiency. Wins in Bracket 2 should be telegraphed and incremental. In other words, try staying away from big explosive spells that can instantly win you the game out of the blue. For Esika, nothing screams incremental more than Planeswalkers. That's right, for our B2 list we have an all-out Super Friends gift exchange. Liliana brought the Chain Veil, Tezzeret brought the Staff of Completion, Jace brought a clone of himself? Okay, who am I kidding? This is a pretty stock standard Super Friends deck with a few cards thrown in for funsies. Since the Prismatic Bridge reveals until we hit a creature or Planeswalker, our goal is to get the bridge out and flip it big or die trying. Some cool interactions include using Aminato to fix our next trigger, flickering our Karth with Eternal Wanderer for maximum digging, using Tezzeret to search for Staff of Completion, and then using him to untap it on our next turn for double proliferate, and eventually fetch the Chain Veil for a bunch of Planeswalker activations. And if he has Luxior equipped, he can't even be attacked. Okay, wait, how did he get 3 different gifts? While this deck can eventually have some crazy proliferate turns, one thing you'll find absent are any counter doublers. Even if a Planeswalker's ult doesn't directly win the game, all of them almost certainly lead you there. And if a counter doubler is out, suddenly any Planeswalker we flip off the top can spell the end for our opponents. Since Bracket 2 is meant to cater to a slower and incremental win, I want each Planeswalker to be on the table for at least one full round before they can ult to give our opponents the chance to try stopping us. So I made sure this deck can't insta-ult Planeswalkers unless there's like 5 other things on board, and at that point I feel like it's pretty earned. Now we've covered brackets 1 and 2, so how do we go about tuning up or down between these. If you're going up from B1, obviously everything has to be legal. Other than that, it really depends on how far separated you are from a winning strategy. If all the cards in your B1 deck are tied through art, for example, there's not much you can do to shift to a winning strategy, but if you think you can operate within your limitation and still have room to optimize for winning, then I encourage you to give it your best shot. Some of the most fun decks I've made have come from giving myself weird constraints. If you're okay with some slots being less flavorful in order to have a more cohesive strategy, then there's nothing wrong with cutting some particularly bad cards for some more functional ones. On the flip side, you might want to shift down from B2 if just playing the cards in your deck brings you joy whether you win or not. Consider how your deck intends to end the game and maybe swap those out for some more cards that make you happy. Bracket 1 is the ultimate casual, I'm just here to have a good time tier, and sometimes it's nice to just cast random junk without a care in the world. While all of Eve's decks are built to win in bracket 2 or 3, they've all been inspired by non-mechanical motivations. Chittering Rats inspired her Marinar deck, Herlu Minotaur for Sethron, and Atog for Atog. All ugly little guys she just wanted to build something with, and sometimes that's all you need. Speaking of building something, if you're finding this video helpful and you want to help grow our channel, please leave a like and subscribe to help us grow. We really appreciate your help. Alright, on to bracket 3. Bracket 3 or Upgraded is where things really start to kick into high gear. B3 decks should last at least 6 turns before anyone's eliminated, and turn 6 is honestly pretty fast compared to turn 8. While card quality isn't at its peak at this point, every card in your B3 deck should definitely have some intended synergy or be a calculated piece of your game plan. There's room for self-expression here, but instead of flavor, it's usually mechanical expression, opting for certain playstyles or card packages in your 99 that interest you the most while driving you to victory. Should I build this commander as a more control-oriented slow burn, or optimize for turbo ramping them out as soon as possible and taking an aggressive lead? Should I lean into lower costed instant speed interaction, or does my deck cater to more high costed mana efficient removal that can take care of multiple threats at once? These and many more are the types of questions you should ask yourself when building bracket 3. While bracket 3 decks still shouldn't chain extra turns or run MLD, these two limitations are slightly changed. Now we can run 2-card combos so long as they are naturally executed on or after turn 6. Big emphasis on naturally. Combos like Veto and Exquisite Blood would naturally occur on turn 5, and therefore are too fast in your deck. You can't simply restrict yourself by saying, I just won't cast Exquisite Blood until turn 6. That still doesn't really make it fair. Additionally, if you run basically any amount of ramp, you should calculate that into your turn count as well. If we take the more classic combo of Sanguine Bond and Exquisite Blood, while these would technically have to come down on turns 5 and 6 if you're hitting your land drops, all it takes is one Arcane Signet to bump this back down to a turn 5 combo, and therefore disqualify it from bracket 3. If you run a deck that truly has no way to ramp or cheat either of these out early, then it would likely be fine for a bracket 3 deck. But seeing as your decks likely have a Soul Ring at the very least, it would be an unfair include. Although that's more of a knock on Soul Ring, to be honest. Bracket 3 decks can also finally run Game Changers. The Game Changer list is a list of cards deemed so efficient, explosive, or game warping that they're banned from brackets 1 and 2. Even bracket 3 can only run up to 3 Game Changers max, and they're all so vastly unique and powerful that there's sure to be at least one that you want to put in your deck. Just because you can run up to 3 doesn't mean you actually have to though. In fact, you don't have to run any at all, and your deck can still be considered a 3 if it's effective enough to win without them. If you want a good example of a bracket 3 deck that costs only $50, check out my Ashling deck after the video. But you're not here for Ashling, you came for Esika. Bracket 3 Esika is Legends. Now we can take advantage of either side of our commander and leverage much more potential. If our starting hand is a bit slower with more late game plays, we can cast Esika early and start dumping our value faster. And if we have good early ramp instead, we can wait an extra turn and play Prismatic Bridge to start flipping bombs off the top. This deck is full of explosive plays, board protection, card draw engines, and one-sided sweepers, and it doesn't mess around. When this deck gets going, you're definitely going to be the archenemy, and that's always a satisfying hurdle to overcome. For Game Changers, we have Vampiric Tutor and Worldly Tutor to fix our bridge triggers, as well as a 1-ring for efficient draw, protection, and occasional legendary synergies. Our late game 2-card combo is Kudo and Elesh Norn, which, if left unanswered, prevents our opponents from having creatures while giving us a nice anthem. Now that we've covered B3, let's talk about tuning again. If you wanted to tune up from bracket 2, I wouldn't actually start with Game Changers or combos yet. Instead, start by analyzing your game plan. Do you have significant plays that you can make on turns 2 and up, and what board state are you trying to achieve by turn 6? Adding a few Game Changers isn't going to consistently elevate your deck to the speed it should be at. If you're new to deck building, it can be difficult to decide what's holding your deck back, so I would suggest just getting more time with the deck and being very deliberate in your analysis. At every turn, look at your hand and the battlefield and point out which cards aren't actually doing much for you, and simply cut it for either a more efficient alternative or something that suits your desired goals better. If you wanted to tune down from bracket 3, obviously cut game changers and 2-card combos, but besides that, just evaluate which cards are doing the most heavy lifting for you. Consider slower and often more interesting alternatives. There are a lot of efficient cards out there that have super unique parallels, usually costing more mana, sure, but offering additional benefits that give you more options to pivot. Just because you're tuning down doesn't mean you have to play bad cards. You just need to slow down your strategy. Cut ramp for more unique hand-picked 2 and 3 drops, swap efficient engines for more grindy ones, or throw in some pet cards you just love playing even if the inclusion is questionable at times. Okay, we finally made it to bracket 4 or optimized. Up to now, we've discussed game changers, 2-card combos, MLD, and extra turns. As we've worked up each bracket, our lists have gotten more and more efficient, consistent, and overall just powerful. But bracket 4 is where the gloves really come off. There are basically 0 restrictions here. Want to ruin your opponent's lands forever? Go for it. Want to take 4 turns in a row? Sure. 10 game changers? Why not 20? The only limit here is that games are expected to last at least 4 turns, which removes some of the fastest win conditions from the roster. Our bracket 4 Esika is a bit different from other B4s you'll see. Although it ditches typals altogether and opts for a load of hyper-efficient spells, many other bracket 4 decks you come across are extremely combo focused. That's just usually the easiest way to win on turns 4 and 5. But if you still want to scratch that Timmy itch and play a bunch of stompy nonsense, this list is filled with fast mana, powerful combos, and a whopping 12 game changers. The name of the game is to just dump as much value out as you can. Some particularly terrifying lines include flickering Aurora Awakener with Emil and ripping either 2 to 3 lands off the top and repeatedly using the effect, or pulling straight gas off the top and suddenly having a massive board. Usually though, this combo does both until you find Maelstrom Wanderer and you just swing for lethal. For infinites, Kiki gives us a few lines here as well. We can either copy Felithar Guardian for infinite 1/4s with haste, or if we have Bloom Tender or Feybarrow Elder with Emil, we can generate infinite mana, which leads to infinite flickers, which leads to infinite hasty bodies of anything on our board. There's not much else to say about bracket 4. It's just the no holds barred bracket that's still not at a competitive level yet, at least not technically. There's enough room here for mechanical self-expression in the sense that you can still play any archetype that's your most favorite, and you have room to try experimental combos and win cons. For tuning, some decks just can't make the journey from bracket 3 to 4. Some strategies like typal decks are just too slow inherently, or don't offer enough explosiveness to close out games that quickly. The only one that I can think of off the top of my head are dragons, and that's really because of Scion and Dracogenesis combo lines. If you're running a more generic strategy like Reanimator, just make sure that you're running the most efficient tutors, reanimations, bombs, and combos you can, without crossing the line into turn 3 territory, of course. For tuning down to bracket 3, make sure you cut down to the necessities, of course, and consider swapping out your most efficient cards like fast mana down to more tame options. If you're not sure how fast your deck runs, just do some goldfishing tests on your deck builder of choice and play a little solitaire to get the feel of your speed. The final bracket is bracket 5, which is straight up CDH or competitive EDH. These decks are built with a singular goal in mind: win at all costs. Since I don't play CDH at the moment, I've brought in a guest to talk more about bracket 5 and Esika CDH deck Semi Blue. Please give a warm welcome to the Wise Hoopoe.
Hello everyone, I'm the Wise Hoopoe. Normally I talk about casual commander deck building and how to make more interesting and satisfying games. Today though, I'll be your guide into the world of CEDH and bracket 5. Now, the normal build for Esika in the meta right now is farm, which just means a pile of good cards that wins with Underworld Breach. However, that seems ill-suited to this video, as it requires tearing the whole deck down and rebuilding it as something altogether more generic. So, we're going to go off the beaten path a bit, to suggest something off-meta and exciting. Now, some of you might read the section of the brackets infographic that says, with meta considerations in bracket 5, and conclude that off-meta CEDH means bracket 4. However, this just means that your bracket 5 deck is built with this in mind, and how you're going to beat the decks on it. And boy howdy, does this deck have a plan to beat them. Without further ado, in the style of Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, here's a deck from an obscure Japanese tournament, Esika Semi Blue. So, Semi Blue refers to an archetype of CEDH deck that has come upon the truth. that big spells are good, and Gaia's Cradle is a hell of a magic card. The goal is to make a lot of mana very early, and then slam preferably hard to counter threats that overwhelm our more efficiency-focused opponents with problems they were not prepared to deal with. This means we're actually keeping a lot of our big splashy creatures from our bracket 4 build, and adding some big sorceries to go with them. We're also going to use the fact that we have the biggest and baddest permanents at the table to get away with some truly irresponsible cheating engines. These are also why the deck is sometimes called Sneak and Show Esika. Finally, let's get into how to win here. Surprisingly, it is also fairly similar to our bracket 4 deck, that we are either overwhelming the field with our big creatures or winning with Kiki-Jiki combo, though we're going to be more redundant this time. First, we have new creatures to exploit for our combo. By using Manamo, we can allow our land untapping creatures that we're running as rituals with Gaia's Cradle to also be infinite with Kiki-Jiki. We also are going to make Kiki-Jiki more consistent using Birthipod and Vivian to go from Esika to Felidar to Karmic Guide, getting back Felidar, to Kiki, copying Karmic Guide to get back Felidar to win the game there. Now, y'all might be asking yourself, how can we afford to fit all this stuff in our deck? It's not like we have infinite slots available, and CDH is known for a lot of staples, especially in 5 color. This is the novel part of Semi-Blue. We simply cut all that. No Rhystic Study, no Thassa's Oracle, no Underworld Breach, not even counter spells. That's right, this deck runs absolutely zero counter magic. The pitch is that they are terrible to cascade into, and I don't need to counter other people's stuff if I'm the problem first. To solve for other people's counter magic, it just runs uncounterable spells, ways to play things that aren't casting, and most of all, lots of cascade. If you think that things like stack wars and timing windows are overwhelming in CDH, and you'd prefer a bigger, splashier style of magic, this deck is just what you're looking for. Hopefully, this has given you a view into a different side of CDH and the basis to start exploring what Bracket 5 has to offer. And with that, I'll toss it back to Zenny.
Thanks, Hoopoe. If you want to check out more of his stuff, I'll leave a link in the description. If you're subscribed to my channel, you'll definitely want to subscribe to his. When it comes to tuning between bracket 4 and 5, it's a lot easier to go down than up. If you want to tune down, just cut the combos that win on turn 3, and you can likely ease up on your stack interaction. Prioritize combos and play patterns that feel more satisfying for you specifically, and give yourself some breathing room to play more bizarre lines and synergies. Be the one that wins on turn 4 with Biovisionary or something. If you want to tune up to bracket 5, however, I'd start by having an intimate understanding of the CDH meta and having a good number of games under your belt. If you try to go in blind, I promise there will be a ton of interactions you never could have planned for. Giving yourself this necessary experience will prime you for understanding what's essential for a B5 deck, and from there you can choose what combo lines you want to prioritize the most and how you intend to get there. And there you have it. That's all 5 brackets broken down piece by piece. I hope this was helpful, and if you have a new player in your group who wants to learn more about brackets, consider sending this their way. This was a way longer project than I originally expected, so thank you for sticking around all the way through. If you think I missed anything, you're probably right, so tell me in the comments below or join our Discord where a bunch of amazing people all flock to chat about all sorts of stuff like this.
Thank you, Zenny, for having me on. Like I said, my name's the Wise Hoopoe. If you liked my section, please come check out my channel. We're not usually talking about CEDH, but more how to build your decks with more intentionality, which is why I think they reached out for this brackets video. If you want a taste, come check out the video that Zenny and I did together on Webs of Effect in your deck. I think it pairs nicely.
Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.